This is the most challenging week of the NFL. We've invested so much time in all 90 of these guys. They've put everything into this. This is everyone's hopes and dreams and aspirations, and we want that to happen to all these guys. Naturally, you have to go from 90 to 53, bring 16 or 17 back on practice squad, and we want to keep as many of these guys as we can in this organization because we're going to need all these guys. As the season goes on, you're going to need a lot of guys to contribute, and so there's challenging discussions to be had, but this is a group that we root for and we're all in on.
That process has begun. Kellen Moore, after the Saints lost to the Denver Broncos on Saturday, they have until Tuesday at 3 Central to get from 90 to 53. As we mentioned, that process has already begun. Ross Jackson is manning our Saints roster tracker over at LouisianaSports.net. He's good enough to join us for a couple of minutes here. Yo, man, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
What is the most notable roster move today?
Yeah, I think for me, and this might come as a surprise, but for me, it's one of the undrafted free agents. It's Jasheem Davis. I know he dealt with an injury that kind of kept him out of the first 2 preseason games, so it's not a surprising move, but it is a notable one because I know that's a guy that they would love to get back on their practice squad. Now, yeah, I think they're going to be able to do that. I think out of the 870-plus players that were released yesterday, it was only like 2% of them that got claimed off of waivers and everything. So I think the Saints are probably going to be safe here. But that, to me, was kind of the most notable one. And then there were a couple of moves at tight end that kind of gave us a little bit of glimpse on where things might be going there, with Michael Jacobson released as well as Seth Green released. Seth Green, not a surprise, but Michael Jacobson and Trayton Welsh were kind of the two that most people were kind of jostling as maybe being the third tight end on the roster. And so if the Saints keep 3, it feels like Trayton Welsh is in line, but Moliki Matavao is still currently on the roster as well. He could be sent down to waivers and then come back to the practice squad, but it looks like Welsh might be on his way to making his first NFL roster here.
You're assuming Juwan Johnson, Jack Stoll will be the first 2 tight ends?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, completely. I think Juwan's obviously locked in, especially with his contract and things like that. And then Jack Stoll, who doesn't necessarily have the contract that kind of bakes him in there, but his connection with Kellen Moore and run game coordinator TJ Paganelli from the Philadelphia Eagles last year, I think kind of helps him, be one of those guys you can consider a lock at the position.
2 other players I want to ask about, not necessarily it's a giant surprise, just that it's notable. One is Cam Akers. He's a veteran and certainly a notable player. What does Cam Akers' release tell you, if anything, about what they plan to do at running back?
Yeah, I mean, it seems so. We couple the release of Cam Akers with what we saw in that final preseason game, where only 3 running backs, or where there were 3 different running backs that took snaps with the first team. Alvin Kamara, who actually took snap with the first team. He only took 1 snap the entire game.
Snap,
and then,
singular.
Yeah, he took single snap with the first team. And then Kendre Miller got 11, and then the other 4 went to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So that kind of tells you that maybe they see those 3 guys as maybe their game day guys. But you kind of have a little bit of a hack here with Clyde Edwards-Helaire because of the fact that he's a vested veteran. You could have a handshake deal with him, cut him for now, and then bring him onto the practice squad pretty immediately, and then maybe bring him back up to the active roster after you're done kind of doing all of the other moves that you have to do to deal with injury and things like that. So he could be a useful piece of the roster management mechanism. But I would expect that those 3 guys are up at the top. But then, Bayless Jones Jr. was really impressive, especially as a returner as well. You could technically factor him into either a running back or a wide receiver number, though, so that gives him a little bit of a flexibility there. And then the only other guy, really, rookie Devin Neal and rookie Marcus Yarn. I think, Devin Neal probably makes the roster there too. So I think the Cam Akers release tells you that Kendre Miller is a guy that's pretty locked in. He was pretty much, similar to what Cam Akers could give you. We believe that he's locked down that running back 2 spot anyway. And then outside of that, you're probably looking at what's going to happen with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But not like you said, not a big surprise. Like Cam Akers never really looked like he fully got his legs back under him throughout this training camp, but we'll be interested to see if he ends up being a veteran guy that comes back to the practice squad at some point.
Go back to Clyde for a second. You said as a vested veteran, that may help them cut him and then sign him back. Does it help me understand? So that means if they cut him, someone wouldn't be able to sign him immediately to the active roster? Help me understand that.
Yeah, basically because he's a vested veteran, and so a vested veteran means that they meet the requirements of years and games active in order to be considered a veteran player. Like there's a literal definition for vested veteran, and I think it's like 6 games 6 games of activity within 3 years, and that could mean on the active roster, but not necessarily the game day roster, all these other things. And so because of the fact that he has, been so much more than that, he is somebody that is a veteran player. So instead of him being waived, he would be released. And so release means that he would go directly to free agency where he can choose where he signs next, as opposed to being subject to waivers where another team can put in a claim for him and then pick him up without him having any word in it. So the Saints could effectively say, hey, we're going to release you because need that roster flexibility, but hang around and we're going to bring you back on the practice squad and eventually back on the active roster. They did that with a guy like Jonathan Abram years ago as well. Like you see that pretty often with these veteran guys.
The other one is James Burnip, the punter from Alabama, was waived. Does that mean Kai Kroger's won the job?
I think so. We kind of asked Kellen Moore about it today, and he kind of mentioned Kai Kroger's on the roster. It's like, yeah, we know that, but is he your starting punter? And he never really kind of got into confirming that. So it's an interesting one. If the Saints don't go to the market and say, hey, there's this other punter that they like, or a guy that they want to try for on waivers first, or whatever that might be, then yeah, it would be Kai Kroger that's set up. But it's interesting because the James Burnip release felt like it was a, hey, they've selected their starting punter, but it doesn't really feel like that's been confirmed yet. So we're waiting to see if maybe there's more action at that position. If not, then yeah, Kai Kroger becomes the 4th punter in 4 years for this team, and then they'll see where things go. I thought he had a strong camp, particularly towards the end, and it kind of, they kind of tipped their hand that he was going to be the guy that wasn't going to be cut at least early because, they had him being Blake Grupe's holder during the preseason games out there. So I thought that was a pretty good indication. But I think punter remains to be seen, but Kai Kroger is firmly positioned unless a new face shows up to be that guy.
He's on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. Read him at LouisianaSports.net. You can watch him or listen to Locked on Saints every day. Preseason game number 3 against Denver. Any big, flashing neon sign takeaways from the game for you?
I think I would say the first-team defense was one. I mean, outside of the unnecessary roughness penalty that got called that led to, a much longer and more successful drive for Denver than they were in shape to have in a 2nd and 20 situation there. But I thought that the first team defense showed some really good things. We've seen some really nice things from their front in particular. And so pressure on the quarterback, all those other things. You'd like to see them finishing those plays at the quarterback still. I think that's still something the team is struggling with right now. But as, the season kicks off, I think the defense is going to be the reason that they're in games, if they're in games early on in the season. And then I would say too that that Kendre Miller takeaway that I had from earlier that we wrote about over on LouisianaSports.net was felt like he very much has solidified that running back 2 role, making sure Kellen Moore making sure that he got reps with the first team, getting him out there, and Kellen Moore just had so much kind of high praise around him. I thought those were 2 kind of big signal beacons, if you will, that let you know what was going on. And then I think the other thing that stands out, of course, is the Landon Young injury. We learned today that injury is going to take a little bit of time for him to get back out there. So this sort of injury-stricken offensive line unit continues to pile up with injuries. And so that means the Saints might be pretty busy when it comes to looking at players that are becoming available over the course of these next 48 hours or so.
All right, Ross, maybe we're burying the lead, but Kellen Moore didn't name a starter.
And I think because of that, we haven't buried the lead.
Maybe so. Okay, make sense of this. 31 other teams have named their starter. The Saints haven't. What are they waiting on?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 possibilities, right? There's the one possibility is that they genuinely still have not picked their guy, and they're still combing through and deliberating and all these other things. Ultimately, though, this all comes down to who Kellen Moore wants, and I'm sure he knows who it is that he wants to be his head coach his quarterback one way or another. The other possibility is that they absolutely know who it is. They're just not announcing it. And if I'm being honest, I don't think that you pick up much of a competitive advantage by waiting very long, but I get the idea and I get the urge to do so. This is something we've seen the Saints do before. Could they kind of take this all the way down? But with them practicing on Wednesday and Thursday, it means we're going to see some kind of quarterback rotation when we're there observing that open window of practice. And so I think maybe that might be when they decide that they want to come out and say, okay, this is the starting quarterback for this season. Whether it's that they truly haven't made a decision or they have and they're just not in a hurry to make it public. Both both of those things have value. Both of those things can be, can be the way that they're going. But as of right now, I don't know how much of a competitive advantage you really get when you already have a new offense. You're already going to have a new starter. There's not a lot that these Arizona Cardinals are going to be able to go back and find on you if you choose, either one of these quarterbacks. And so I don't think that the gamesmanship thing is there. I think there might still be a genuine deliberation that's happening, and the Saints are giving this as much time as possible. I don't know if that's good or bad. We'll certainly find out, but they'll have that decision made, I think, before they actually hit the practice field again, and that to me is the most important thing.
Okay. The last thing, I always say on Tuesday at 4 o'clock, that's not going to be the final 53. That's the first 53
right.
Because, as you mentioned, there's roughly 900 players that are going to be free agents. What positions might the Saints be looking to upgrade most notably if a veteran player or a young player gets released or waived by their current team?
Yeah, I think you're watching the offensive line. I think that's the most, I guess I don't want to call it obvious, but the most likely spot, just because of the injuries that they've dealt with there. The other position that I think could be really interesting is tight end, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of really exciting talent that's going to hit the market at that position, but certainly a place that they could be watching. And then running back comes to mind just basically based off of the reports that the Saints might be, calling around and checking in on running backs. If that's the case, then certainly they'll be paying attention to, who hits the market and if there's any opportunities to add more talent at that position. So those three stand out. I'd be curious if another big-bodied wide receiver would be of interest to New Orleans at any point, even if it's just for the practice squad. So you have another one of those guys to go to, especially considering Devon Bailey does have that knee thing that they've been watching over in Denver, that knee injury that they've been watching over in Denver. And so maybe that can make sense if the right guy hits the market. But I think it's going to be a lot of offensive spots where you'll see the Saints do that, headlined by offensive line.
He is Ross Jackson, LouisianaSports.net, Locked On Saints podcast or YouTube, whether you want to watch or listen. We always appreciate it, man. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Appreciate you. Take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.